The Italian citizen Massimiliano Melargo, he's aged 27, was forced to leave the UK despite holding a certificate issued by the Home Office, the so-called the Home Office Certification of Application, which expressly allowed him to enter and leave the country at will, while his application for a life and work visa was being considered. That was reported by The Guardian. But what are those no rules after Brexit now? Well, Melargo reported that he was detained for a night, separated from his Ukrainian partner, and put on the first flight to Venice by the border police. I'm not feeling well at all. I'm far away from my girlfriend, who I've been with for 5 years. I've lost my job and I will lose the deposit for my apartment, he complained. His sister has also lived in the UK for 12 years, and Melargo, who works in the hospitality industry, wanted to leave the UK to celebrate his birthday in Finland. I'm afraid I'll have problems if I return, even just to visit, even as a tourist. I'm a law-abiding person, a good citizen. I certainly don't deserve to be treated like a criminal and deported. I contribute fully to the country's economy and society, he says. Melargo, who was in the UK before Brexit, then made a late application to remain in the country as required by the UK-EU agreements. He had left the country before Brexit and wanted to return before the end of 2020 to secure his right of residence, but was unable to do so due to the lockdown and pandemic-related issues. He returned to the UK in January 23 and lodged a late visa application. After an initial rejection, he appealed. The certificate authorizes entry and exit from the country while the application is being decided, as I said, including during an appeal process. But it also clearly advises against entering and leaving the country. And it also allows border police to request proof of residency in the UK before December 31st of 2020. And as of January 1st in 2021, the rules have changed. Since this day, it has been necessary to apply for a work visa or skilled worker visa, which is issued based on a point system. And this rule favors skills and talents over the person's background. In order to receive the visa, 70 points must be achieved, and the first 50 are defined as non-negotiable points that one must have in order to obtain this visa. Massimiliano Melargo told how he was detained overnight and separated from his Ukrainian partner and, as I said, put on the first flight to Venice by the border force officials in a step lawyers say contravenes the withdrawal agreement between the EU and the UK. I don't feel great because I'm away from my girlfriend, I've lost my job and I'm going to lose the deposit on my flat, he said. I think I said that before. And he had left the country, as I said, for a birthday holiday break in Finland and was originally told he would be removed to Helsinki when he was stopped at Gatwick. But they didn't send him to Finland. He said he feared he could not come back to pick up his belongings or to visit his girlfriends of 5 years or his sister, who, as I said, has been in the country for 12 years. And he's in a very difficult position now. And I know what he's going through because with friends from living in the UK that are from the EU, we talked a lot before they left there for holidays or something. And I'm quite sure that he's in a lot of distress here. But the problem is if they told him not to go while the application is running, that was not a wise move either. But Melargo had lived in the UK, as I said, before Brexit and made this late application to remain in the country using the Brexit EU settlement scheme set up for the millions of EU citizens living in the country before the UK withdrew from the Union in 2021. And it's a very special case because he left before Brexit and returned late because of the whole COVID stuff, which is not his fault. But of course, the application process is more difficult then. But he returned to the UK after Brexit and submitted the late application for the EU settlement scheme in January 23. And with an appeal going on, they say that he believed he was unlawfully removed because the Home Office certification of application which notifies a future employer or landlord of a person's right to work and rent property while awaiting a decision, states that he can travel despite what they told him. And it says, your certificate of application allows you to travel in and out of the UK pending a final decision on your application, including during any appeal. Confusingly, it also advises against travel in and out of the country, and on a previous occasion when Melargo returned from the holiday, he was not stopped. So it's a little bit more understandable why he traveled. It appears the border officials relied on a paragraph in the COA which states that someone may also be asked for evidence to show that they were resident in the UK by December 31st in 2020, such as a national insurance or HMRC record. And Luke Piper, a lawyer with a Work Rights Centre and an EU settlement scheme specialist, said the rights of EU citizens were guaranteed under the withdrawal agreement, including during an application process. The Home Office appears to be overstepping its powers and allowing Border Force to prejudge the case before the appeal has been concluded. These appeals should be reviewed, processed, and concluded before there can be a decision on entry to the country by Border Force. What happens at the border appears to be down to the officer who sees you on the day. The whole point of the certificate of application is to demonstrate that you are in an application process that has not been concluded. Confusingly, it tells recipients they can travel but also say they shouldn't. That's Kafkaesque. And in response, the Home Office suggested it was key for all of those traveling with a COA to also carry proof of living in the country before Brexit. And a spokesperson said, a certificate of application issued under the EU settlement scheme advises the holder that if they travel overseas, they may be asked for evidence that they qualify under the scheme in order to re-enter the UK. Border Force officers may stop any arriving passenger for the purposes of further examination where they are not immediately satisfied that they qualify for entry. Well, another Brexit-impacted industry was very fittingly tourism. In 2019, tourism was the fastest growing industry in employment terms in the UK, and according to Visit Britain, and was predicted to be worth over £257 billion by 25. Brexit, the pandemic, and rising inflation and energy prices, though, have had a devastating effect on the industry, and incidents at the border as well. There were 3 million visits to the UK by overseas visitors in June 22, according to the Office for National Statistics data published in October 23, and down 19% from 3.7 million visits in June 2019. Visitors spent $26.5 billion during the 12 months of 22. That's down in 2019 in nominal terms as well. And visitor spend was 17% below that term. And it was estimated that 140,000 direct tourism and travel jobs were lost across the UK in 2020 due to the pandemic. And while domestic tourism and the supposed rise of the staycation fared better, this also saw a 49% fall in domestic spending. The government responded to the pandemic with financial support for the tourism, aviation, and wider travel sector, and the airline industry alone received over £7 billion in government funding, including the furlough scheme. In June 21, the government stated that over £25 billion of financial support had been provided to hospitality, tourism, and leisure businesses in the UK during the pandemic, and a £10 million kickstarting tourism package to support communities that depend on tourism was also introduced, whilst small businesses in tourist destinations received grants up to £5,000 to help them adapt their businesses following the pandemic. And destination management organizations at risk of closure were provided with £1.3 million in funding as well. And in June 21, the government published its tourism recovery plan, aiming to help domestic tourism recover to pre-pandemic levels by 2023. And they set out a framework for tourism policy up to 2024, replacing the tourism sector deal and the International Business Events Action Plan that were published in 2019 because of the pandemic. But the pandemic is indeed not the only problem they have, and it is Brexit. And so they might have repaired some of the damages from the pandemic, but they really have a problem with Brexit now as well, because from November 23, the UK also started requiring that visitors who do not require a visa to visit the UK obtain an online £10 electronic travel authorization before their visit. And the rollout will start with Middle Eastern countries and be fully implemented by the end of 24. And beyond the pandemic, Brexit will offer a challenge to the industry, with key industry bodies arguing before the pandemic that the UK's withdrawal from the EU threatens another 25,000 jobs in the holiday industry, and that the end of freedom of movement will make it harder for the tourism industry to employ talented staff. A 2018 report by the Tourism Alliance showed that 38% of hospitality and tourism businesses were struggling to fill vacancies. And furthermore, tourism spending after inflation has been largely stagnant in the UK for over 2 decades. Initiatives like the 2017 Tourism Action Plan and the digital campaign My Tourism Job have probably done more to identify the problem than actually solve it. And the trade body UK Hospitality welcomed that the government's tourism recovery plan had recognized the key role hospitality and tourism plays in the UK, but said the plan needs to come with a root and branch reform of business rates and a permanently reduced rate of VAT to support the sector in the longer term. And they have not listened to all the problems that Brexit has really done in that industry. And if you want to know more, the next video is right in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.